Hello and welcome to the first video on this channel, Historically Scientific, with me, an 18-year-old who just has a keen interest in history and science, but has no history or science-related degree and therefore technically is not qualified to talk about any of the topics I am going to talk about, but does a lot of research. On this channel, I aim to delve into the strange, the scientific and spectacularly human sides of history, from medical curiosities to forgotten revolutions, ancient inventions to grim rituals. We will explore everything both lovely and frightfully gory about our shared past. Today's video is about the remarkable evolution of man's understanding and treatment of a disease that kills nearly 10 million people each year. A disease that still strikes fear in the hearts of humans today as it has done for millennia. A disease that, unlike other ancient diseases, still is highly prevalent in society today, unlike diseases such as the bubonic plague. That disease, as many of you could probably have guessed from the title of this video, is cancer. So a quick trigger warning. This video may show pictures that could trigger the more squeamish ones of you, and therefore I will quickly put the timestamps on this frame just so you know when to fast forward. Moreover, cancer is a highly sensitive topic, so I understand if you feel the need to click off this video to retain your mental health. Before we look at the history, let's look into the science of cancer very briefly. According to the World Health Organization, cancer is a generic term for a large group of diseases that can affect any part of the body. This is not the most specific of definitions, so let's look at the biology of cancer. Cancer occurs when the mitosis of damaged or mutated cells occurs, forming tissues known as tumors, which can either be benign or malignant. A main feature of cancerous tumors is the ability of the cancer cells to very rapidly divide and grow beyond a certain location, so they can move through the bloodstream to the other adjoining tissues of the body, forming secondary tumors. This whole process is called metastasis. This is why when we're usually talking about cancerous tumors, we're talking about malignant tumors, as benign tumors tend to have a membrane surrounding it, thus preventing them from carrying out a process of metastasis. Cancer cells can also signal to blood vessels to grow around the tumors and supply these tumors with oxygen and nutrients and remove waste products from these tumors. This creates a competition with the neighboring healthy cells and therefore at times will cause the death of healthy tissue which surrounds these tumors, as the tumors take up a large portion of the nutrients. Tumors can also hide from the immune system, so they cannot be eliminated like normal abnormal cells are, and instead trick the immune system into helping them and convince the immune cells to protect the tumor rather than attacking it. They can accumulate multiple changes in their chromosomes, like duplication and deletion of certain chromosome parts, and some cancer cells therefore have double the normal number of chromosomes. And these cancer cells rely on different kinds of nutrients than normal cells. In fact, some cancer cells make energy from nutrients in a different way than normal body cells, and this allows cancer cells to grow more quickly. Now, let's move on to the actual historical part of this video. Cancer, as I'm sure does not surprise any of you, has a very dark and often very complex past. The evolving cancer therapies that we are more familiar with today stem from the notable changes to the understanding of cancer from the age of Hippocrates to the modern day. The name cancer came from the Greek word karkinos, which came from Hippocrates' observation the shape of malignant tumors resembled crab claws, clamping tightly on clean, unmarked organs. Cancer appeared in medical literature as early as 400 BCE. Hippocrates claimed that cancer was a humoral disease, which means that it is a disease that affects the entire body rather than just a single organ, and cancer can only be eradicated by rebalancing the whole organism through a multidisciplinary, holistic approach, which are two principles that are still understood today in the treatment of cancer. However, the further research into cancer was stunted for many centuries, mainly due to the interference with the Dark Ages, where the strict orders of religion inhibited much of scientific reforms, especially in Europe. Moreover, those who did study deeper into this peculiar disease seemed so enthralled by Galen's principles that they could find no cause to question or improve on his theory. Claudius Galen was an influential Greek writer and physician working under the Romans around 160 AD. He carried on the pre-existing belief of the four humours: blood, black bile, yellow bile and phlegm must always be in a delicate balance or else maladies form, and evolved it by claiming that inflammations were an overabundance of red blood, swelling of the lymph and pustules were an overabundance of phlegm, jaundice was an overabundance of yellow bile, and proposed that cancer was a static black bile, which could not escape from its confines and therefore coagulated into a mass known as a cancerous tumour. Of black colour without boiling cometh cancer, wrote Thomas Gale, a 16th century British physician who used Galen's principles in his art, and this proves how Galen's studies were used religiously for nearly 500 years of medical administration, and so it is not surprising that no great breakthrough in cancer research would occur during this time. Despite perhaps being a hindrance, though, Galen did progress the teachings of cancer that was passed down to him. He claimed that though one could try and remove the lethal black bile, the black bile would always come back, and that principle, if used with cells, paints a clear picture of why cancer is so hard to cure once diagnosed. In 1533, Vesalius, a French medical student in the University of Paris, would decide to make it his life's work to reform Galen's anatomical picture of the human body by using bones and corpses from graveyards and public hangings and dissected them to illustrate the true anatomy of a perfect human body. During his entire career, he could not find the black bile that Galen wrote of, leaving many after Vesalius to scratch their heads due to the common question, what exactly is cancer? Nearly 250 years later, Bile would publish a textbook in London named The Morbid Anatomy of Some of the Most Important Parts of the Human Body, which would present the anatomy of the human body in its disease state. He would describe cancers of the stomach as large as an orange and ulcers on the testicles showing late-stage testicular cancer. Yet he too could find no bile ducts carrying this black bile to the tumours, which was pertaining to Galen's theory. The discovery of the lymphatic system created an idea called the lymph theory, which would replace the four humors theory, where cancers may now originate from this newly discovered lymphatic system. The lymphatic system is a circulatory system made up of lymph vessels, which are much like blood vessels. It drains extra fluid called lymph that has passed out of the blood and into tissues, and returns it back into the blood. The only fault was that it was now thought that cancers were made of lymph. In 1838, Johannes Müller would discover cancers were made out of cells using his optical microscope, and Virchow would discover the cellular theory, or cells arise from other cells. 22 years later, Carl Diesch built the concept of malignant cells and cancer spread through the cell's rapid and uncontrollable division. These three people would revolutionize the understanding of cancer. And now, in this part of the video, we're going to transition from looking at the evolution of the understanding of cancer to the evolution of cancer treatment. Before the time of anesthesia and proper concepts of sanitation, the cancer surgery seemed to sentence a patient for a far shorter life sentence than the cancer itself. However, by the turn of the 19th century, ether and then anesthesia was discovered, which allowed a more painless mode of surgery for the operating patient, and Louis Pasteur's and Joseph Lister's work in antiseptics and preventive medicine allowed cancer surgery to reach a new dawn. William Halsted, a professor from Johns Hopkins Institute in the 1890s, developed a form of cancer surgery labeled radical mastectomy. Halsted was inspired by a British surgeon, Handley, who discovered that cancer spread outwards from an inner growth. Using this concept, Halsted proposed that the true source of cancer should be removed by surgery of removing breast tissue. This surgery had been done for centuries, usually leaving women who had breast cancer in such a state of deformity that her body never really recovered. However, Halsted's radical mastectomy did not teeter quite so dangerously between life and death. However, the caveat was that the cancer in the breast should not have already performed metastasis, or else the cancer would continue spreading with no hope of recovery. Cancer surgery for much of the 20th century, however, would become so radicalized that effectively the surgeon would cut out cancerous tissue as if they were carving out impurities from the flesh, leading to many deformities and little lasting treatment, as cancer metastasis would still occur. Just when it felt like man had descended into a sick infatuation with cutting cancer out of the body, the modern era brought a fresh outlook, which would change cancer treatment forever. And two treatments that would be adopted in the early 20th century would be radiotherapy and chemotherapy. Radiotherapy, or the use of ionizing radiation to treat cancer, has its roots in the late 19th century following the discovery of X-rays by Wilhelm Röntgen in 1895, radioactivity by Henri Becquerel, and in 1898 the discovery of radium by Marie and Pierre Curie. The first recorded therapeutic use of X-rays occurred in 1896, just months after Röntgen's discovery, with early treatments often being crude and poorly controlled. In the early 20th century, radium became a key source of radiation for medical use, and by the 1920s, dedicated radiotherapy departments were being established in hospitals. Technological advancements during the 1950s and 60s, such as the development of the linear accelerator, allowed for a more targeted and high-energy radiation treatment, improving both efficacy and safety. In the modern era, techniques such as intensity-modulated radiotherapy or IMRT and image-guided radiotherapy or IGRT have enabled highly precise tumor targeting and reduced damage to healthy tissue. Radiotherapy is now a cornerstone of cancer treatment and is used in 50% of all cancer patients. Now we're going to look at chemotherapy, which is the use of chemicals to limit the division of the cancerous cells and therefore treating cancer. Sidney Farber would revolutionize the concept of chemotherapy from the tests he did with his friend Yellow Sugarow's antiphalates on cancer cells in his small Boston pathology unit, which was connected to a larger hospital. He discovered that aminopterin produces remission for children with acute lymphoblastic leukemia who were in the neighboring hospital. Acute lymphoblastic leukemia, or ALL, is a type of cancer of the blood and bone marrow, spongy tissue inside bones where blood cells are made. This antiphalate blocks chemical signals that prevent rapid division of cells and is seen as the predecessor of the chemotherapy drug methotrexate, which is used today. The first remission of this type of cancer was in 1956, which was a huge leap forward, as children who had previously been diagnosed with ALL would have basically died after not living very long from the diagnosis. He is seen today as the father of modern pediatric pathology and chemotherapy. This remarkable discovery would not only shape how this type of cancer was treated, but also how governments funded further research into this disease. Farber raised funds for cancer research with the Variety Club of New England in 1947. Together they created the Children's Cancer Research Foundation, or CCRF, which was one of the first nationwide fundraising efforts to take full advantage of modern media, such as the broadcast of the radio show Truth or Consequences. On May 22, 1948, one of the CCRF's first patients to respond to Farber's antiphalates, a 12-year-old boy by the name of Enoch Gustafson, or lovingly called Jimmy, appeared on the show. Despite having Burkitt lymphoma rather than leukemia, Jimmy's story became an inspiration for all pediatric cancer patients and triggered the renaming of the CCRF to the Jimmy's Fund. The success of the Jimmy Fund led to the emergence of marketing and scientific advancement of knowledge about diseases. For the remainder of his career, Farber would extend far beyond his identity as a pathologist and oncologist, becoming not only a clinician, but a public cancer research advocate too. This personal transition was echoed in the shift in society's attitude towards cancer as well, bringing cancer into the public spotlight, propelled funding and awareness for cancer research for the remainder of the century and beyond. This led to governments becoming more involved in cancer research in the 1950s. Up until his death in 1973, Farber became a star presenter at the congressional hearings on appropriations for cancer research. With Mary Woodard Lasker, a socialite and long-term advocate of biomedical research, famed surgeon Michael E. DeBakey, Senator J. Lister Hill of Alabama, and Congressman John E. Fogarty of Rhode Island, Farber led the drive for a massive expansion of federal funding for cancer research. Between 1957 and 1967, the annual budget of the National Cancer Institute, the government's primary funder for cancer research, jumped from $48 million to $176 million, which only kept growing as more and more successes were seen in the treatment of cancer. Today, I'm elated to say that humanity has moved far away from the purposeless cutting of tissue seen years ago in the name cancer treatment. Today, depending on the stage, type, and wishes of the patient, cancer can be treated through radiotherapy, surgery, chemotherapy, and immunotherapy, or the stimulation of the body's immune system to fight cancer. Charities have also been set up to support people who require help in living with the cancer diagnosis, such as Macmillan Cancer Support, who work in tandem with the NHS, and since its creation in 1911, has helped millions of people in dealing with the pressures of life and treating their cancer. One aspect, which is the most important development in my opinion of cancer treatment, is that healthcare professionals can now give people hope to believe that they can fight the disease and come back to live a normal life before they have gotten a diagnosis. Cancer as a whole has troubled mankind for generations and will continue to trouble us for as long as cells divide. But we are in the twilight of cancer research, and improved cancer diagnostic techniques have led to more and more cancers being diagnosed earlier, and therefore the treatment of them having a higher rate of success. Maybe we won't live in a world without cancer, but a world where we can live with cancer easier is on the horizon, and we must thank all the great scientists from Hippocrates to Faber for their advancements who made all of these possible. Thank you for listening to the video. In the description, I will link my sources for all the information listed in this video, as well as cancer charities you can check out and maybe learn more about if you're particularly interested. If there is anything you felt was miscommunicated in this video or anything major that I missed out, bearing in mind that this video is meant to be a brief overview of the history of cancer and its treatment, then please comment below. Also comment below if you have any topic in particular any of you want me to discuss. Thank you for listening to this video again, and have a great rest of your day, and hope to see many of you soon.